I would like to point out there is a fundamental kind of connection between the primary work Father Max Joseph Metzger did in founding or helping to create a kind of movement of individual groupings in various cities in Germany. And they all took the name of Una Sancta from the Latin creed, I believe in one holy Catholic Apostolic Church. What he did was to knit them together, give them a kind of minimal sort of constitution, what they're all about, so that rather than being a small scattering of individual groups here and there in various cities in Germany during the 1930s and 40s, they became a united organization. They were careful not to be too prominent in public because the Gestapo was everywhere, but they knew about each other. And so they developed what I would call, an esprit de corps kind of thing. And Max Metzger was there at the center of it all, which is exactly the kind of thing that he did just superbly in various kinds of organizations. And that's one of the profound things we brought to the spread of this Catholic, Protestant, eventually interreligious dialogue. His family, of course, was Catholic and Protestant there in Germany. And immediately after the end of the war, by which time, of course, Metzger had been executed by the Nazis, beheaded already. But his name was prominent, and it brought together national meetings among the remnants, you might say, of these Una Sancta groups that had grown up under his leadership in the late 1940s, at the latter years of World War II. And then they moved forward with a kind of inner spirit and drive and a kind of elan vital that drove them. And it was this basic spirit that Max Metzger had engendered in this budding group. And as soon as the war was over, Catholics and Protestants then could meet together publicly. And because the end of the war also brought many hundreds of thousands of refugees from western part of, the eastern part of Germany, driven into the west as the Russian army moved toward the central part of Europe. And so that accelerated this Una Sancta movement, which Metzger had helped to bring into fruition during the Nazi period. And it exploded, you might say, in the post-war period, because suddenly every Protestant church in a certain town, city, was it. Now it had hundreds or maybe even thousands of Catholics suddenly driven from the east into the west, and they were now new citizens in their town. No Catholic church to have services, so the Protestants said, you can use ours after, at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon or whatever. The reverse happened in other areas which were predominantly Catholic and had an influx of Protestants. And so suddenly the Una Sancta movement not only was freed and liberated from the Nazi plague, but also was accelerated because of the mixing of the people, the great mixing of people. There were millions and millions that were involved in all this. So the Una Sancta movement then right after the end of the war exploded in a positive sense for especially these two reasons, but all kinds of other reasons. People wanted to have surcease of all of this hatred and harming of people rather building bridges rather than barriers. And that's what Una Sancta was all about. And at the end of the war, that's that reality that Father Metzger gave both the kind of name and driving spirit and linkage among people exploded with his new situation. And that gave rise to the Second Vatican Council. And remember, that's what Pope John 23rd did. He took his experiences and his concerns about saving lives of Jews when he was there in the eastern part of Europe as Cardinal Archbishop in that area. So that's what the contribution that Father Metzger made to what we now enjoy and take for granted, that Catholics and Protestants and Orthodox Christians and Jews and atheists and Buddhists, etc., need to be and have been in dialogue, and it has to go deeper and broader. And we see that today, for example, with the former Soviet Union still up to its old tricks, now invading Ukraine, which had the exact opposite effect of what Mr. Putin wanted, namely, it brought those who want freedom for everyone together to work together to protect those who are being oppressed, in this case, the Ukrainians. And that's especially poignant for many Americans like me, who has one father, I should say one parent, namely my father, who came from the Ukraine and came to the United States, met my Irish American mother-to-be, and here I am, and my children and grandchildren, etc. Amen.